The hum of the servers in my tiny home office used to be the most comforting sound in the world. It was the soundtrack to my dreams, a constant, low thrum beneath my fingers as I typed code late into the Seattle nights. My name is Ben Carter, and I was 35, a software engineer with a mind buzzing with ideas, one big idea in particular. An AI project, something truly groundbreaking, something that felt like it could change things. It wasn't just a project. It was my life's ambition, every spare moment, every ounce of creative energy poured into it. I had shared all of it, every triumph, every setback, every anxious thought, with Julia. She was my partner, a freelance marketing consultant, and for a long time, I thought she was my biggest supporter. Her laughter used to fill our apartment, a bright, reassuring sound that made the endless hours feel less solitary. I told her everything, the technical challenges, the investor pitches I was preparing for, the hopes I had for a future where this wasn't just a concept, but a tangible innovation, a company. My company. We met at a tech industry mixer, an unlikely place for me, usually buried in code. She'd approached me, drawn in by a stray comment I made about an obscure programming language. She had this way of making eye contact that made me feel utterly seen, utterly understood. Julia was vivacious, quick-witted, and seemed genuinely fascinated by my world. She wasn't a developer, but she grasped the broader vision, the potential impact. She'd listen for hours, nodding, asking intelligent questions, her hand often resting gently on my arm or shoulder. She praised my dedication, said my ideas were brilliant, unique. It was exhilarating, finally having someone who not only tolerated my obsessive passion, but seemed to share in its glow. We moved in together quickly, a testament, I thought, to the strength of our connection. Our apartment in Capitol Hill became our sanctuary, and my small office, initially just a spare room, became the crucible of my ambition. There were small things, looking back. She'd sometimes make comments about how much time I spent coding, a little sigh, a light jest about me being married to my laptop. Or she'd occasionally get prickly if I mentioned a female colleague, but she'd always brush it off with a charming laugh, saying she was just possessive of her brilliant boyfriend. I dismissed them as quirks, signs of her love, nothing more. My focus was so laser-sharp on the future, I barely registered the tiny, discordant notes in the symphony of our life. Then the glitches started. It began subtly, insidiously. I'd be working on a critical module, saving frequently, only to find an older version loaded the next morning. Sometimes, entire chunks of code, meticulously crafted, would be gone, replaced by garbled data or a blank space. I'd spend hours recoding, frustrated, assuming I was tired, making silly mistakes. My Git history, my version control, seemed to corroborate my own memory lapses. No suspicious commits, just the latest version being wrong. Then came the emails. Important correspondences with potential investors, crucial introductions from mentors, would vanish from my inbox. Not deleted to trash, just gone. I'd search frantically, filter by sender, by keyword. Nothing. I'd sheepishly follow up, feeling unprofessional, making excuses about server issues. Some investors, initially enthusiastic, started ghosting me. First one, then another. They'd reply vaguely, saying the timing wasn't right, or they were exploring other avenues. The initial buzz of excitement surrounding my project began to fade, replaced by a growing knot of anxiety in my stomach. I'd pour out my frustrations to Julia over dinner. I'd recount the vanished code, the corrupted files, the silent investors. She'd listen patiently, always. "Ben," she'd say, reaching across the table to hold my hand, her thumb stroking my knuckles. "You're under so much pressure. This is a huge project. You're probably just overworked, making small errors. Happens to the best of us." Her voice was soothing, reassuring. She'd tell me the tech world was brutal, that investors were fickle, that I needed to toughen up and not let these minor setbacks derail me. "Maybe you're just being a little paranoid, love," she'd suggest, her eyes soft with concern. "It's easy to feel like the world is against you when you're pushing for something big." Her words were a balm, easing the sharp edges of my growing unease. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. Who else would I trust? She was my rock. She was right, I told myself. I was stressed. My perfectionism was getting the better of me. It must be me. The self-doubt, fueled by her gentle reassurances, began to fester, slowly eroding my confidence, making me question my own memory, my own judgment, my own sanity. I felt like I was losing my grip. The real gut punch came just before a scheduled pitch with a prominent venture capitalist, someone I'd been trying to get an audience with for months. I'd poured weeks into refining my pitch deck, rehearsing every word, anticipating every question. I sent the final version to their assistant the day before, double-checking the email address, confirming receipt. The morning of the meeting, I was wired, buzzing with nervous energy. I walked into the VC firm, heart pounding, only to be met by a confused receptionist. My meeting had been canceled, she said. Not rescheduled, canceled. Their office had received an email from my address late last night, stating I had a family emergency and needed to postpone indefinitely. My blood ran cold. I hadn't sent any such email. I showed them my sent folder, my calendar. Nothing. It was a phantom email. I looked like an amateur, a flake. The VC associate, a stern woman in her 50s, looked at me with thinly veiled disdain. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice dripping with disappointment, "we expect professionalism. We simply cannot work with someone so unreliable." My face burned. My carefully constructed image, my months of networking, dissolved in that instant. I stumbled out, feeling a profound sense of humiliation and despair. Back home, I collapsed on the couch, utterly defeated. Julia found me there, tear-streaked and hollow-eyed. I recounted the horror, the utter inexplicable nature of it all. She held me, stroking my hair, murmuring comforting words. "Oh, Ben," she sighed, her voice laced with sympathy. "This is awful. It must be a competitor, someone trying to undermine you. Or maybe you just accidentally sent an old draft of a cancellation email that you'd forgotten about. You know how sometimes we draft things and forget?" I shook my head, my voice hoarse. No, I hadn't. I was meticulously organized. But her suggestion, so seemingly innocent, planted a seed of doubt. Was I truly that absent-minded? That stressed? She made me tea, wrapped a blanket around me. She told me I was brilliant, that I deserved success, but that maybe I was pushing myself too hard. "Perhaps it's a sign, Ben," she said softly, kissing my forehead. "Maybe you need to slow down, focus on us, recharge. Your project will still be there. I'm here for you always." Her words, intended to soothe, felt like lead weights. They implied I was too fragile for this, that my ambition was the problem. I clung to her comfort, though, because I felt like I had nothing left to hold on to. I felt utterly alone, lost in a fog of self-doubt and unexplained failures. My dream, once so vivid, felt like it was slipping through my fingers, and I couldn't understand why. I felt like I was losing my mind. The breaking point arrived a few weeks later. I was demonstrating a new feature to a small group of angel investors I'd managed to secure through an old university contact. It was a remote presentation, and I was logging into my demo environment when I saw it. A critical database table was empty. Gone. Just before I logged on, it had been there. I stared at the blank screen, my heart hammering against my ribs. I fumbled, apologized profusely, tried to debug on the fly, but it was useless. The investors, already wary from my previous blunders, quickly excused themselves. They were polite but firm. No explanation, no second chances. That was it. My last shot gone. I sat there, staring at the empty table on my monitor, the taste of ashes in my mouth. This wasn't stress. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't me. The cold certainty hit me with the force of a physical blow. Someone was doing this. And the only other person with regular access to my home network, to my computer, even if it was just through her own devices on the Wi-Fi, was Julia. The thought was monstrous, a viper in my heart, but it wouldn't let go. I felt a chill so profound it made my teeth ache. I remembered the vanished emails, the corrupted files, the canceled meeting, all connected to my home network, to my computer, to us. A desperate resolve settled over me. I needed proof. For myself, if no one else. I spent the next 48 hours in a quiet frenzy, researching, installing. I set up hidden logging software on my home network, deep packet inspection, keystroke loggers on my personal laptop, configured to activate only when I wasn't actively using it, and camera feeds discreetly placed to monitor my office when I was out. It felt dirty, invasive, a betrayal of my own home, my own relationship. But the alternative was to drown in this corrosive doubt, to let my dream die an unexplained death. The waiting was agonizing. Every creak of the floorboards, every late-night bathroom trip made my stomach clench. I felt like a spy in my own life. Then, 3 nights later, it happened. I was out for a supposed late-night coding session at a co-working space, a lie I told Julia to create an alibi. My phone buzzed with an alert. Activity on my network. In my office, my hands trembled as I connected remotely, accessing the logs. The timestamp was explicit. Julia, her laptop, connecting to my machine via a remote desktop protocol that I'd stupidly set up for her once, months ago, so she could access a shared document. She'd used it to navigate to my project directory. I watched, horrified, as the logs meticulously recorded her actions. Opening my investor CRM, changing the status of a lead to disqualified, sending emails from my account to reschedule important follow-ups at inconvenient times, and then, the final, crushing blow, deleting lines of code from a recently committed feature branch. Not randomly, but targeting the core logic, making it unusable. The same thing had happened a week ago, just before the angel investor meeting. And 2 weeks before that, with the VC. It wasn't incompetence, it was precision. It wasn't accidental, it was deliberate. And then, a different set of logs. Not technical, but social. From her own device, I saw chats with her friends, veiled comments about my ambition, about how I was getting too big for my britches, how I was obsessed and neglecting her. And then, the true horror, an exchange with a colleague in her marketing firm. A detailed plan, how to subtly spread rumors about my unreliability, how to exploit her knowledge of my schedule to sabotage meetings, how to make my project stutter just enough to make me doubt myself. And the motive, laid bare in stark, sickening text. Asterisk, he's getting too successful, too independent. If he launches this, he'll leave me. I need him to need me. I need him here, with me. Asterisk, the air rushed out of my lungs. It wasn't just sabotage. It was emotional abuse. A calculated campaign to destroy my self-worth, to keep me small, to keep me tethered. The woman I loved, the woman who held my hand and told me I was stressed or paranoid, was systematically dismantling my dreams, piece by agonizing piece. It wasn't about competition or technical glitches. It was about control, about her insecurity, about preventing my success because she saw it as a threat to her perceived stability, to our stability, which in her mind meant my absolute dependence on her. The emotional collapse was immediate and absolute. I felt a cold, empty void open up inside me, a profound, gut-wrenching grief that dwarfed any professional failure. It was the death of trust, the murder of a dream by the very person I'd invited into its most sacred spaces. My body shook uncontrollably. The tears came then, hot and stinging, not for the project, not for the lost opportunities, but for the devastating betrayal. Every kind word, every reassuring touch, every sympathetic glance now replayed in my mind as a twisted, manipulative performance. My heart didn't just break. It shattered into a million jagged pieces, each one piercing me anew. I wanted to scream, to rage, but all that came out was a strangled sob. I stayed away that night, curled up on a hard chair in the co-working space, staring at the muted cityscape, feeling utterly broken. But as the initial shock wore off, a strange, cold clarity began to emerge. The fog lifted. All those inexplicable incidents, all those moments of self-doubt, suddenly made horrifying sense. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being actively, maliciously undermined. This wasn't love. This was prison. And seeing it, truly seeing it, was the first step towards liberation. The pain was still immense, a raw wound. But beneath it, a tiny flicker of resolve began to ignite. I would not let her win. I went back to the apartment the next morning. Julia was still asleep. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw a stranger. The warmth, the affection, the love I'd felt for her evaporated, replaced by a chilling disgust. I couldn't even bring myself to touch her. I went into my office, transferred all the evidence onto an encrypted drive, and then wiped my logging software clean. This wasn't about legal action. It was about protecting myself, about proving my sanity to myself. When she woke up, I was waiting in the living room, the laptop with the crucial evidence open on the coffee table between us. Her eyes were still soft with sleep. "Morning, love," she murmured, a gentle smile on her face. Rough night at the office. I didn't answer. I just pushed the laptop towards her, pointing to the screen. Her smile faltered. Her eyes scanned the logs, the screenshots, the chat histories. The color drained from her face. Her breathing hitched. Ben, what is this? Her voice was barely a whisper. You tell me, Julia, I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, a stark contrast to the earthquake raging inside me. You tell me why you systematically destroyed my work, my reputation, my dreams. She looked at me, her eyes filling with tears. I I can explain, Ben. It wasn't, it wasn't to hurt you. Not really. She sounded desperate, pleading. I was just so scared. Scared that if you succeeded, if you got your big company, you'd leave me. You'd move on. I saw how consumed you were. I just wanted you to stay, to need me, to be here. Her confession, delivered with a mix of fear and self-pity, was just as horrifying as the discovery. It confirmed everything. She didn't want me to succeed. She wanted me dependent. Her love was a cage. You broke me, Julia, I said, my voice finally cracking. You actively, deliberately sabotaged everything I worked for, everything I dreamed of. And then you stood there, played the supportive partner, and gaslit me into believing I was crazy. That's not love. That's poison. There was no argument, no bargaining. I simply stood up. Get out, I said. I want you out. Today. I can't look at you. I can't breathe the same air as you. My voice was firm, resolute, a strength I hadn't realized I still possessed. She tried to protest, to beg, but I cut her off. It's over, Julia. Every single thing you ever said, every touch, every moment, is now tainted. You've taken away more than just my project. You've taken away my ability to trust. And that's something I don't know if I can ever get back. Within hours, I had packed a bag and moved into the co-working space I'd been lying about. It felt raw, exposed, but infinitely better than staying in that apartment, which now felt like a mausoleum of my former self. I slept on a pull-out couch, surrounded by other people's whiteboards and caffeine-fueled dreams. The silence of the night, devoid of Julia's presence, felt heavy but also strangely liberating. The first few weeks were a blur of grief and anger. I started rebuilding the project from scratch, meticulous in my version control, paranoid about security. Every line of code was a painful reminder, but also a defiant act of reclamation. I worked relentlessly, fueled by a searing desire to prove her wrong, to prove myself right. The memory of her betrayal was a bitter fuel, burning away my naive trust, leaving behind a hard, crystalline resolve. It wasn't easy. The emotional scars were deep. There were days I'd just stare at my screen, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had happened, the sheer cruelty of it. I had to relearn to trust my own judgment, to distinguish genuine support from veiled manipulation. I started therapy, a space where I could finally unpack the trauma, the gaslighting, the profound impact it had on my self-worth. It was a long, slow climb out of the abyss. Months turned into a year. The co-working space became my temporary home, a cocoon where I healed and rebuilt. My AI project, now dubbed Phoenix, emerged stronger, more resilient. I had fortified its architecture, not just against external threats, but against the insidious kind of sabotage I had experienced. I surrounded myself with a small, trusted network of advisors and friends, people whose support was genuine, unburdened by ulterior motives. I learned to listen to my gut, to recognize those tiny, discordant notes before they became a full-blown cacophony. Phoenix eventually took flight. It wasn't an overnight success, but it was my success, built on the ashes of betrayal, forged in the fires of resilience. I stood on a stage, presenting my work to a room full of attentive investors, my voice steady, my confidence earned through fire. I still carried the scars. They were a part of me, a painful reminder of what I had endured, but they no longer defined me. They had simply carved a deeper resolve into my soul, a fierce protectiveness over my dreams, my instincts, my future. The world still felt a little sharper, a little less forgiving, but I was also sharper, more aware, more determined. I wasn't the naive Ben who shared everything, but a stronger, wiser version, someone who knew the true cost of ambition and the even greater cost of betrayal. I was finally free, truly free, to soar. And this time, no one was going to clip my wings.